Before SpaceX almost went bankrupt, Elon Musk almost abandoned the idea entirely. In 2001, he wasn't building rockets. He was flying to Russia, trying to buy one. Not to compete with NASA, not to build a launch empire, not even to start a rocket company. He wanted to send a greenhouse to Mars, a small lander carrying plants, cameras streaming back images of life growing on another planet. The idea was symbolic. If people saw something alive on Mars, even something small, maybe it would reignite belief that the future could be larger than the present. The meetings did not go well. The Russians quoted prices that felt inflated. There are accounts of dismissive laughter. Whether exaggerated or not, the message was clear. Rockets were not toys for internet entrepreneurs. On the flight back to the United States, something shifted. Musk opened a spreadsheet. He began calculating the raw material cost of a rocket: aluminum alloys, titanium, carbon fiber, liquid oxygen, RP1 kerosene. The total came out shockingly low compared to the sale price of launch vehicles. That moment wasn't cinematic inspiration, it was arithmetic. His working theory formed midair. Rockets are expensive not because physics demands it, but because the industry structure demands it. Too many subcontractors, too much legacy overhead, too little iteration. If that theory was right, then access to space wasn't constrained by destiny, it was constrained by economics. And economics can be redesigned. So instead of buying a rocket, he decided to build one from scratch. In 2002, Space Exploration Technologies, SpaceX, was founded in a warehouse in El Segundo, California. There was no inherited aerospace giant behind it, no dormant program, no government safety net, just capital from the PayPal sale and a thesis. Vertical integration plus rapid iteration equals lower launch costs. Tesla already existed when Musk joined it. SpaceX began as an argument. An argument that rockets could be built more like software. Iterative, vertically integrated, aggressively optimized. An argument that reducing the cost per kilogram to orbit would unlock entire industries. And beneath that argument was something more personal. Musk has said he believes humanity must become multiplanetary. Not as a slogan, but as a survival strategy. Civilizations collapse. Asteroids exist. Entropy eventually wins. You can debate the philosophy, but in 2002, betting most of your personal fortune on that belief was not rational in a traditional sense. It was existential. He reportedly invested around $100 million of his own money into SpaceX in its early years. That is not passive ownership. That is commitment bordering on recklessness. And he wasn't alone. Tom Mueller, a propulsion engineer with deep engine experience, joined to design SpaceX's first engine, Merlin. Gwynne Shotwell would later become the operational backbone of the company. The early team wasn't polished aerospace bureaucracy. It was engineers willing to build, test, fail, and test again. They started small, Falcon 1, a two-stage, liquid-fueled rocket designed to carry modest payloads to orbit. Not because Mars needs small rockets, but because startups need survivable complexity. If Falcon 1 could reach orbit, the thesis would survive. If it failed repeatedly, the thesis would die. March 24, 2006. Falcon 1 Flight 1 launched from Omelek Island in the Marshall Islands. Failure. A corroded nut caused a fuel leak, fire in the engine bay, loss of vehicle. March 21, 2007. Flight 2. The rocket reached space but failed to reach orbit. Close enough to taste it, not close enough to matter. Because in rocketry, almost is indistinguishable from no. By now, SpaceX had burned through enormous capital. Building rockets is not like building apps. You don't pivot cheaply. Every test costs millions. Then came August 2nd, 2008, Flight 3. The first stage performed well. Then, during stage separation, residual thrust caused the first stage to recontact the second stage. A small timing issue, a catastrophic outcome. 3 launches, 3 failures. Outside observers saw incompetence. Inside the company, the mood shifted from optimism to urgency. This was 2008. The global financial crisis was tightening liquidity everywhere. Investors were cautious. Credit markets were frozen. SpaceX was not just fighting physics, it was fighting time. Musk was also funding Tesla at this point, which was itself bleeding money. His personal capital was stretched thin across 2 extremely capital-intensive ventures. There were credible reports that SpaceX had enough funding for 1 more Falcon 1 launch. 1. If it failed, the company likely would not survive. No dramatic explosion, no front-page obituary, just payroll that stops clearing. Now imagine the psychological weight of that. Hundreds of engineers working relentless hours, not just trying to make a rocket work, trying to prove that the spreadsheet from 2001 wasn't naive. Flight 4 preparation began. Failure analysis pointed to stage recontact during separation. The fix was deceptively simple. Adjust the timing. Allow residual thrust to dissipate before separation. It sounds minor. It was everything. September 28, 2008. Falcon 1 Flight 4 lifted off. First stage burn, nominal. Stage separation, clean. Second stage ignition. The minutes stretch. Every second is data. At roughly 9 minutes after launch, the second stage engine shut down on purpose. SpaceX had reached orbit. Falcon 1 became the first privately developed liquid-fueled rocket to reach orbit. The payload was a mass simulator. Symbolic. Orbit was the product. That single success rewrote the narrative, but credibility does not pay salaries. Cash does. NASA was preparing for the retirement of the space shuttle. The agency needed commercial partners to resupply the International Space Station. In December 2008, NASA awarded SpaceX a commercial resupply services contract worth approximately $1.6 billion. That contract did not arrive out of charity. It arrived because Falcon 1 Flight 4 proved SpaceX could reach orbit. That was enough. In the span of months, SpaceX went from near bankruptcy to being a strategic supplier to the United States government. The thesis survived, and survival unlocked scale. Falcon 9 development accelerated. Dragon became real. Years later, something even more radical happened. A Falcon 9 booster landed vertically. Propulsive landing, controlled descent. A so-called suicide burn, firing engines at the last possible moment to cancel velocity. Reusability was no longer theoretical. The cost curve began to bend. Here is the deeper lesson. SpaceX's near-bankruptcy week was not about heroism. It was about alignment. Engineering precision aligned with economic timing. A private company aligned with a government need. A personal belief aligned with institutional demand. If Flight 4 had failed, SpaceX would likely be a cautionary tale about ambition outrunning competence. Instead, it became proof that launch costs were not laws of nature. They were design choices, and design choices can be changed. That week did not guarantee success. It guaranteed survival. Everything else came later. Reusable rockets, satellite constellations, crew launches, stainless steel Starship prototypes rising and exploding and rising again. But none of that happens without September 28, 2008, without the spreadsheet on a plane, without the warehouse in El Segundo, without engineers willing to debug combustion instability at 2 in the morning, without one last launch. Space is hard. Physics is indifferent. But sometimes arithmetic plus obsession is enough to bend an industry. And in 2008, for one quiet week, the future of private spaceflight balanced on a few seconds of stage separation timing. Next, we leave orbit, because while SpaceX was lowering the cost of reaching space, another founder was lowering the cost of everything else. Not with rockets, with retail. Sam Walton is next. Now I want to hear from you. Which founder, company, or rise and fall story should we cover next? Drop your ideas in the comments, and it might just become the next episode of The Founder Files.